you have these very cool paradigms, which again, some of them are like I call old-fashioned or traditional, that again, you probably take for granted, you don't think twice about it. This is how things are. This lead, not push thing is one of them. You just labeled it. And so there's a guy named Dr. David Hawkins that writes a lot about spirituality, vibrations, and meditation. He has this book called Power versus Force. I haven't read it, but I understand the concept. It's very much what you're saying. Power versus force. Having power versus having forcing something, like you said, pushing. And so in his world of meditation, spirituality, and like emotional spectrums, like there's anger and pride, and these are force. And then there's power, which is like love, which is like you said, sort of like leading by example, like just being very generous, and I think there's a couple different, like when you really get hanging out with enough masters and read enough books or study enough of the same topic, you realize that everyone has eventually reached the same exact conclusions with different labels. You see this across religions and philosophy. Like, there's a lot of overlap between Christianity and Buddhism and spirituality. They all basically end up at the same exact place with a different sort of figurehead or a label, but it's like, I am that I am. Like they all sort of say that like heaven is within, you create your reality. Everything that happens to you is sort of like a mirror of your inner realities. And it's like these sort of things exist. And if you have a wide enough breadth of experience and research and reading and stuff, you eventually start to recognize like, oh, this is what all the masters think. And this lead not push thing is another one. Like Stephen Pressfield changed my sort of approach to my work ethic in life when I read The War of Art. Yeah. And I remember he had a line in there, and I can only remember like the synopsis of it was that he calls it the artist. You're the artist. We're the artist. He says the artist cannot reach back and help anyone up. And for me, that was a lifelong struggle as the guy in my family who went to college, as the dude who was always like super motivated. I had little man chip on the shoulder issues too, where I was going to be like number one at everything. And I saw like my friends weren't number one and I was like, I can help you be number one. And I remember like my whole life up until, like 25, whenever I read this line, I had always tried to be a fixer. I'd find someone who's down the dumps, look for the diamond in the rough kind of thing, and bring them up. And I read that line. He said, the artist cannot reach back and help anybody up. The best thing an artist can do is do the very best they can for themselves and do it in such a way that it inspires others to follow in their example. And that, when I read it in that book, that was my lead, not push moment, where I had to stop saying to my friends and family, like, you can be better. You're not doing enough. You don't work hard enough. Or like, and again, listen to the words that I'm saying. These are push. These are force, right? And instead, it's like, hey, well, when will we see you again? It's like, I got a thing coming up. I'll come back for Thanksgiving for sure, but I got to do this. My friend says, hey, man, Call of Duty, the new Call of Duty just came out. I remember I texted this actual conversation. I said, yeah, dude, I think hit me up in like April. He's like, bro, it's February. I'm like, I know. I got to just take care of this thing real quick, And it's like, so those sorts of things, those dynamics, again, for you, it's pre-programmed. It might just be like automatic. This is just something you believe and you know it to be true in your head. There's a lot of people. I hope that me explaining it and like kind of like sharing it with it help other people sort of recognize it, see their own patterns and paradigms, and try to improve and like start to pay attention to what they do and how they talk and how they behave on a daily basis so that they can evolve. Because for me, and I'm on my rant right now, some of the people that I hired and trained and worked with when I moved from like Agora to Wealth Press and I moved from a copywriter to a copy chief, these were people that were colleagues. They were coworkers, and now I'm their boss. And so a lot of the stuff that you said about my team looks up to me to, like you said, my team looks at me like I'm leading the way. I'm leading the charge. All of a sudden, there are dudes who used to sit beside me who are now like on the hierarchy. I tell them what to do, and I have to earn that every day. And again, so like I had to evolve as like a human being who went from like, when I used to get bad feedback from legal at Agora, I'd be like the first dude down 808 basement, like throwing tables over and saying, this is horse shit. Like, and just like losing my cool every 20 minutes. And I had to become like this more.
I love it, man. I think you got a lot of wisdom for a young dude. I think that comes from from experience and a lot of introspection. You said something that I think is worthy of pointing out. Number one, you said you really like talking about leadership, and you just used the word, like you're talking about people, and you're talking about people and human beings. The difference between leadership and management and leadership are not the same thing. Management is the oversight of systems and processes. Leadership is all about people and pouring into people. And I think that probably one of the biggest shifts, I don't want to call it a shift because I just think it kind of maybe just expanded for me as I've gotten older, is just really recognizing the value in people, no matter their station or position in life, and not looking at, like not comparing anybody to the standard of a successful entrepreneur or the guru or whatever, but just looking for the good within other people and pouring into them. And right, like I've always wanted to, part of my, I don't want to call it legacy because that's a little lofty, but I always want people to walk away from time with me feeling better about themselves. Right. I don't want to talk about me. I'd rather talk about you. I don't want to talk about what I do well. I'd rather talk about what you do well, man. I don't want to talk about what I need. I'd rather talk about what you need. And I'd rather look for the good in you and talk about the good in you and make you feel good and edify you. I believe wholeheartedly in edification, in pouring into people. And so one of the things that I think, if I can say this, that makes me a good leader, like the people that I used to lead when I worked for the health club company. So you're now going way back, the health club company, they're still in communication. I get DMs from some of those people still to this day. They follow me on social media and comment and like. One of the things that made me a really good leader was that I recognized my job was to develop people. My job was almost a coach. And part of being a coach is to give people greater self-esteem, to give people a greater self-worth. And part of that is reminding them of the good, of being their biggest cheerleader, of helping them to see the positive in themselves that they often don't see, and doing that repeatedly over and over, and being their biggest cheerleader, right? Doesn't mean that we don't have hard conversations, right? It actually makes the hard conversations that much easier, because after you've poured into somebody so much, right, they don't want to let you down. They don't want to disappoint you more than they don't want to disappoint themselves. I just want to say, right, like, and I believe that to me carries over to every part of my life, but specifically in business, right? Like, there are human beings on the other end of our house file. There are human beings. They're not a record in our CRM. They're not just a number. There are real people with real dreams, real goals, real aspirations, real fears, real families, real shortcomings. And we owe it to them to treat them with respect and honor, because they all deserve it. Like, even with the, you could say the David Ogilvy, the prospect, she's not dumb, she's, your wife. That to me, it falls under that umbrella of, you're talking about freaking human beings. Don't try to pull the wool over their eyes. Don't try to use like fluff and shenanigans. Create something good. Put together a great solution, wrap it in a great proposition, right? And be real and honest with them and bring it out there. And that's when you'll freaking soar. You got to put people first. When you put profits first, and I have friends, man, that they're like, they don't care. Like I have close friends that I love and respect and appreciate that have wildly different worldviews than I do, in that they're like, it's so what, he's my friend, right? I'm going to compete against him, or I'm going to put something out that might hurt his business. For me, see, I wouldn't do that. I'd never do that. Right? Why? Because people come first to me, because I respect and honor my friendship much more than I do a check for any amount of money. I don't care, man. Right? And the same thing with, in some instances, I've made less because I've not been willing to put out a product that I did not believe was in the best interest of our people, right? And so I believe it's about people first. I also believe, in the spirit of transparency, that that's good business. And so I believe that attitude is not only the right attitude, but it will also lead to greater business success. And so, does that make sense, man?
Oh God, yeah. I think the thing is too, it's like, it's so difficult because yours is a philosophy. It's a compounding philosophy. Yours is a philosophy of relationships and those dynamics, versus this profit first sort of philosophy. The results are tangible and they're immediate. Yeah. And so for you probably don't have a spreadsheet of everybody you've ever met and all the favors they've done for you, known and unknown, that are actually the result of these relationships that you've built, that you can't.
I have, look, if I wanted to, I have a lot of checks that I can cash. I have a lot of favors that I could call in, but that's not, to me, what it's about, man. Like, that's cool and that's great. And, and I'm not bashing anybody that runs their life that way, to each his own. That's not the way that I run my life. And, I've always, at the end of the day, man, I want to be able to lay my head on my pillow at night and know that I've done good. I want to lay my head on my pillow at night and know that if all of my clients and all of my customers got together in a room alone without me there, a big gigantic room, for an hour before I walked in, that nobody would be like, wait, Todd charged you this and Todd charged me this, or he gave you this bonus and I didn't get that bonus, or there's right. I want to know, I want to lay my head on my pillow at night and know, I want to lay my head on my pillow at night and know that there's not Better Business Bureau issues out there, chronic issues out there. I want to lay my head on my pillow at night and know that if somebody searches my name, right, that they're going to find a heck of a lot more good than they will bad. I want to lay my head on my pillow at night, and I want to know that, right, that if my kids search my name one day, that what they'll find is a heck of a lot more praise than anything else. And to me, those things are important. My reputation, my character, my word, right, and my relationships are, to me, at the end of the day, everything. And so, the idea of, and I'm not saying, by no means, let me make sure that I'm crystal clear on this. I don't run a nonprofit. And so, right, I'm not here. I don't run a charity, right? I love making money. Granted, I live a very conservative, life. Like I don't drive a Lambo by choice. I drive a Dodge Ram pickup truck. I have a beautiful home, so don't get me wrong, right? I'm no angel, right? But I do put other things far ahead of how much money is this going to make me? And great, I'll do this dude a favor because I know that in 3 weeks, I'm now going to call him up and ask him to do me a favor. And I just don't work that way, man. And maybe, look, that could be a to my detriment sometimes, but I'm okay with that, right? From a pure business and problem, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's the trade-off, right? Like, as a trusting and generous person, you open yourself to, you become vulnerable. You become someone who can be taken advantage of, because I've been on that too. But at the same time, I want to tell this story because I think it's very powerful. It was powerful for me to experience it, which is pouring into people. So my team is basically people that I adore as humans, and I start there. And I basically, because I do feel like my copy process is very systematized, that I can teach almost anyone with the right ethic and character to become a great copywriter. Something that's crazy that you said, like one of my writers hit me up yesterday, the day before, and it just sent me this sweet line of messages, like about everything that I taught him like a year or two ago. It's paying dividends. I'm reading it right now. It's paying dividends. You instilled an important ethic in me. Only now I see how important it is. Like, these are the practices, and these are the practices is how we approach our craft. And like, I get one of those calls. So I actually had one of those experiences on Thursday. I see a guy in person. So I'm a very, when we get to the draft, when we get to the copy, we're professionals. Like, that's it. We're not buddies at that point. We're professionals. And so he submitted some subpar work, and I let him know, because too, like, I would need to like have those hard conversations that you're talking about, where it's like, you have to understand, I'm not going to go easy on you because we're buddies here. Like, you cannot mail it in on me. I will not allow it. And so I was nervous with the next time I saw him, because I was very stern. And he said, I want to talk to you about that feedback. And I was like, all right. And he said, I just want to let you know, like, I really respect it. He said, I sent in what I sent in, and I just respect, like, you just absolutely wouldn't take it. And he says, I just think it says a lot about like how you run stuff. And I like, it was a great reminder about why I follow you and why I respect you so much. He's like, I'm glad you did that. And it was kind of crazy, like, because like I was so nervous. I was like, this guy's gonna, I feel like any moment I'm gonna break his spirit because I'm being so firm with him. He's gonna quit on me. And it's like, but it was actually the opposite, because I think it comes from a place of, I try to, like you said, I'm pour into people, empower the team. And like, I try not to write much of our copy anymore. Instead, I want to let everyone else sort of like run the show, run the business. I want to have a business in a box. That's why I changed from Kyle the writer to Copy Squad. I don't want it to Kyle Squad. I want it to have my team doing the majority of our campaigns, our emails. I'll still do and fulfill the products. I believe in that whole pour into people thing as well. I just think it's a slower burn, and you do have to go through some 6-month painful, like, because when you're doing it that way, when you're pouring into people, first off, you always blame yourself when things go wrong, because you're like, how could I have trained them better? How could I have been more like whatever? And then after like 6 to 12 months, you're like, it's not working. And so now you got all this investment, you poured yourself into them. You're blaming yourself all the while if you're anything like me, if they're not successful. And then you got to decide that this is not going to, that's probably one of the hardest parts.
Well, look, man, I think, a couple things. Number one, you are responsible, right? Like the owner, the business owner, the entrepreneur is responsible, right? Because you're responsible, regardless of whether you take the mentality or approach or philosophy of pouring into people, you are responsible. Look, ultimately you hired them, you onboarded them, you trained them or had them trained, you equipped them with the systems. Maybe they were the wrong hire. Therefore, it's your fault for hiring them. Maybe you onboarded them or incorrectly, or maybe your onboarding system that somebody else used to onboard them was weak. Regardless, you are responsible.